Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the City of Miami Planning, Zoning, and Appeals Board meeting for September 30th, 2020. If everyone can go on unmute, and we will stand for the invocation and quickly followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Collins?
Here.
Mr. Dominguez?
Here.
Mr. Gersten? Mr. Mann? Mr. Parrish?
Here.
Mr. Parasov?
Here.
Mr. Vadillo? Mr. Ziegler?
Here.
Vice Chair Torrance?
Here.
And Chair Garavaglia?
Here.
Thank you. We have quorum.
Great. And just an acknowledgement of the alternative member that they're in their position as a full board member with all the voting rights associated with being that board member.
Thank you.
So with that, I'll turn it over to the attorney for the opening comments.
Thank you, Chair. Pursuant to Executive Order Number 20-69 issued by the Office of the Governor of Ron DeSantis as extended by Executive Order Number 20-193 on August 7, 2020, municipalities may conduct meetings of their governing boards without having a quorum of its members physically present or at any specific location, and by utilizing communications media technology such as telephonic or video conferencing, as provided by Section 120.54, subsection 5B2 of the Florida statutes. As such, the members of the Planning, Zoning, and Appeals Board are appearing remotely for this meeting. Procedures for the public comment will be explained by me in one moment. And so, Chair, I'm going to go on to the legal statement. Any person who is a lobbyist pursuant to Chapter 2, Article 6 of the City Code must register with the City Clerk and comply with related city requirements for lobbyists before appearing before the Planning, Zoning, and Appeals Board. A person may not lobby a city official, board member, or staff member until registering. A copy of the code section about lobbyists is available in the City Clerk's office or online at municode.com. Any person making a presentation, formal request, or petition to the board concerning real property must make the disclosures required by the city code in writing. A copy of this code section is available at the office of the city clerk or online at municode.com. The agenda and the materials for each item on the agenda for this virtual meeting was published and made available to the board members in advance of the meeting. The materials are also available during business hours at the city clerk's office and online 24 hours a day at miamigov.com. Any person may be heard by the board through the chair and pursuant to the published notice for not more than 2 minutes on any proposition before the board unless modified by the chair. Since this is a virtual meeting as authorized by the governor of the state of Florida, members of the public wishing to provide public comment can do so by uploading a pre-recorded video or voice message. Pre-register for a callback to provide live public comment or submit public comment via the city's public comment form. I'll provide more details in a moment, and more details can be found by visiting miamigov.com/virtual boards. All comments submitted will be included as part of the public record for this virtual meeting and will be considered by the board prior to taking any action. The city will accommodate any speakers desiring to appear in person at City Hall, subject to all applicable emergency measures in place to prevent the further spread of COVID-19. Such speakers will be subject to screening for symptoms of COVID-19. Any person exhibiting any symptoms will not be permitted to enter City Hall. All interested parties are required to abide by all state, county, and local emergency orders and are urged to remain at home and practice social distancing. If the proposition is being continued or rescheduled, the opportunity to be heard may be at such later date before the board acts on such proposition. When addressing the board, the member of the public must first state her name, address, and what item will be spoken about. When the board takes action or votes on any proposition, it shall do so by a roll call vote to be recorded and included in the record. Anyone wishing to appeal any decision made by the board for any matter considered at this meeting may need a verbatim record of the item. A video of this meeting may be requested at the Office of Communications or viewed online at miamigov.com. Please silence all cell phones and other noise-making devices. Any person with a disability requiring assistance, auxiliary aids, or services for this meeting may notify the hearing board's liaison. Please note that board members may have generally been briefed by city staff on items on today's agenda. PZ items shall proceed according to section 7.1.4 of the Miami 21 zoning ordinance as temporarily modified by emergency ordinance numbers 13902, 13903, and 13914. Pursuant to emergency ordinance number 13903, parties for any PZ items, including the applicant, appellant, appellee, and any qualified intervener, as well as the applicant's representatives and any experts testifying on behalf of the applicant, appellant, or appellee, may either make arrangements with hearing boards to be physically present at City Hall to be sworn in by oath or affirmation, or may appear virtually and make arrangements on their own to be sworn in by oath or affirmation in person at their location by an individual qualified to perform such duty. Also pursuant to that ordinance, members of the general public are not required to be sworn in. Pursuant to ordinance number 13914, city staff may be sworn in by hearing board staff or the city clerk for any planning, zoning, or quasi-judicial hearings remotely by audio-video communication technology from a location within the state of Florida, provided city staff can be positively identified. The members of the board shall disclose any ex parte communications to remove the presumption of prejudice pursuant to Florida statute section 286.0115 and section 7.1.4.5 of the Miami 21 zoning ordinance. Staff will then briefly present each item to be heard. For applications requiring board approval or recommendation, the applicant will then present its application or request to the board. If the applicant agrees with the staff recommendation, the board may proceed to its deliberation and decision. The applicant may also waive the right to an evidentiary hearing on the record. The city requires anyone requesting action by the board to disclose before the hearing anything provided to anyone for agreement to support or withhold action to the requested action pursuant to City Code Section 2-8. Regarding access to the virtual meeting, the City of Miami is using Zoom to hold its September 30th, 2020 virtual Planning, Zoning, and Appeals Board meeting. Zoom is a cloud platform for video and audio conferencing, collaboration, chat, and webinars across mobile devices, desktops, telephones, and room systems. In order to ensure that the public has the ability to view the meeting, the city's communications department will broadcast the meeting through all the usual channels and avenues that are provided when a Planning, Zoning, and Appeals Board meeting is held fully at City Hall. The meeting can be viewed live on Miami TV at miamigov.com/TV and on Comcast Channel 77 for residents within the city. The broadcast will have closed captioning. It will also be broadcast on YouTube. Additionally, the city has selected a virtual platform that does not require the public to purchase or download any additional software or equipment to watch this meeting. Aside from the Zoom platform and that the participants will be appearing remotely, the public will have no discernible difference in their ability to watch the meeting. Regarding public comment for the virtual meeting, the city has developed several new methods of ensuring public comment for a virtual meeting. It has established 4 new options. The first option allows the public to provide public comment via the city's dedicated public comment voicemail by calling 305-250-5352, where individuals can leave a 2-minute message that will be played during the virtual board meeting. The second new option allows for the public to submit a 2-minute video to be played during the virtual board meeting. The third new option allows the public to submit comments via the city's online comment form. The comments submitted through the comment form were distributed to the board members and city administration throughout the day so that the board can consider them prior to taking any action. Additionally, the online comment form will remain open during the meeting to accept comments and distribute to the board members up until the chair closes public comment. The fourth new option allows the public to pre-register online or by calling 305-250-5354 to provide live public comment by phone during the virtual meeting. For all of these four new options, all the comments received will be included in the public record of the meeting. The city created a simple set of instructions explaining how the public may submit their comments using these options. Those instructions were provided in the notice to the public and published online at miamigov.com/virtualboards. Additionally, like any other planning, zoning, and appeals board meeting, the public may provide public comment at City Hall. The city set up a terminal in the event members of the public travel to City Hall to provide public comment. However, as previously mentioned, due to COVID-19, all speakers desiring to appear in person will be subject to all applicable emergency measures in place to prevent the further spread of COVID-19. Speakers who appear in person will be subject to screening for symptoms of COVID-19, and any person exhibiting any symptoms will not be permitted to enter City Hall, but will be able to participate through the other remote options described. These 5 public comment options established and provided for the virtual Planning, Zoning, and Appeals Board comply with Section 286.0114 and Section 120.54 Florida statutes. The city published an agenda as well as included in the notice to the public pursuant to City Code. Excuse me. The items and topics that will be discussed at the virtual Planning, Zoning, and Appeals Board meeting. Additionally, the public has been given the opportunity to provide public comment during the meeting, which is at City Hall and on the online public comment form, and within reasonable proximity and time before and during the meeting. Comment voicemail, online public comment form, public comment video upload, and the live public comment by phone. Moreover, Section 286.0114, subsection 4C, Florida statutes, specifically authorizes the city to prescribe procedures or forms for an individual to use in order to inform the board or commission of a desire to be heard, to indicate his or her support, opposition, or neutrality on a proposition. The city, through its 5 public comment options, has provided 5 different procedures and forms to indicate support, opposition, or neutrality. The city provided information on how to submit comments in the notice to the public and on a dedicated webpage. Board members, are you comfortable with the notice provisions set forth and these uniform rules of procedure we've established for this virtual meeting?
Yes, we are. Thank you. I think a couple of members joined during the reading. I see Mr. Vadillo and Mr. Gersten. Did anyone else miss roll call? I think we're good. Thank you all for joining. Are there any minutes to approve?
Chair, there are no minutes to approve. I would like the opportunity, however, to read Mr. Altabe's resignation. He submitted his resignation, but he requested that it be read to the board.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, to whom it may concern, after serving almost 4 years on the Planning, Zoning, and Appeals Board, I believe it is time for me to resign to free time to pursue other opportunities. It was a pleasure to serve with all of you, and I will appreciate it if you give notice of my resignation effective immediately to the board and say thank you to them in my name.
Thank you. Thank you for your service if you're watching, Mr. Altabe. Is there any staff that needs to be sworn in?
Yes, sir. City staff, please turn on your video cameras and unmute your microphones. Please raise your right hands. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
Thank you very much. You may mute your microphones again.
Thank you. Are there any changes to tonight's agenda that the city wants to bring forth? Seeing none, I think it's my understanding that these 3 items will be presented together. So I guess we can go ahead and read them into the record.
Okay. PZAB 1, file ID 7850. A resolution of the Miami Planning, Zoning, and Appeals Board with attachments recommending approval of an ordinance of the Miami City Commission amending ordinance number 13114, the zoning ordinance of the City of Miami, Florida, as amended pursuant to Article 3, Section 3.12.3 of the Miami Code, rezoning certain parcels of approximately 141.58 acres for the creation of the Wynwood Norte Neighborhood Revitalization District, NRD2, by changing the zoning classification of the real properties located between I-195 on the north, I-95 on the west, Northwest 29th Street on the south, and North Miami Avenue on the east, Miami, Florida, as more particularly described in Exhibit A, modifying Article 3 to reflect the creation of the NRD2 and modifying the transit zone regulations that are applicable to the subject parcels in the NRD2 as described in Exhibit B, making findings of fact and stating conclusions of law, providing for binding effect, containing a severability clause, and providing for an effective date. PZAB 2, File ID 7851, a resolution of the Miami Planning, Zoning, and Appeals Board with attachments recommending approval of an ordinance of the Miami City Commission amending ordinance number 10544, the Miami Comprehensive Neighborhood Plan of the City of Miami, Florida, as amended, pursuant to an expedited state review process in accordance with Section 163.3184, subsection 3 Florida statutes, by changing the future land use designation of approximately 88.362 acres of real properties located between I-195 on the north, I-95 on the west, Northwest 29th Street on the south, and North Miami Avenue on the east, Miami, Florida, as more particularly described in Exhibit A. From duplex residential to high-density multifamily residential and restricted commercial, from low-density restricted commercial to restricted commercial, from medium-density multifamily residential to high-density multifamily residential, restricted commercial, and general commercial, from medium-density restricted commercial to restricted commercial and general commercial, from restricted commercial to general commercial, and from major institutional, public facilities, transportation, and utilities to general commercial, as more particularly described in Exhibit A, making findings, directing transmittals to affected agencies, containing a severability clause, and providing for an effective date. PZAB item number 3, File ID 7852, a resolution of the Miami Planning, Zoning, and Appeals Board recommending approval of an ordinance of the Miami City amending the zoning atlas of ordinance number 13114, the zoning ordinance of the City of Miami, Florida, as amended, by changing the zoning classification of the acreage described herein, approximately 91.57 acres of real properties located between I-195 on the north, I-95 on the west, Northwest 29th Street on the south, and North Miami Avenue on the east, Miami, Florida, as more particularly described in Exhibit A. From T30 Suburban Transit Zone Open to T4R Urban Core Transit Zone Restricted and T4L General Urban Transit Zone Limited. From T4R General Urban Transit Zone Restricted to T5L Urban Center Transit Zone Limited and T50 Urban Center Transit Zone Open. From T4L General Urban Transit Zone Limited to T4R General Urban Transit Zone Restricted, T5L Urban Center Transit Zone Limited, and T50 Urban Center Transit Zone Open. From T40 General Urban Transit Zone Open to T5L Urban Center Transit Zone Limited. From T50 Urban Center Transit Zone Open to T680 Urban Core Transit Zone Open. From CI Civic Institutional Transit Zone to T50 Urban Center Transit Zone Open and T680 Urban Core Transit Zone Open, as more particularly described in Exhibit A, making findings containing a severability clause and providing for an effective date.
Thank you. That concludes all three. With it being kind of one parcel, we're going to go to the public comment at City Hall, and you can speak on any one of the three items. So if we could just open up City Hall and name and address, and you have 2 minutes. Welcome.
Thank you. Adriana Oliva, 3545 Southwest 3rd Avenue, 33145. And I'm with the Wynwood Norte, with the Wynwood Community Enhancement Association. It's my pleasure to convey the association's support for the Wynwood Norte Neighborhood Revitalization District presented as today's items, PZAB 1, 2, and 3. Wynwood CA has a simple but important mission of providing a unified voice for neighborhood improvements and enhancing the quality of life of current and future residents. The Inclusive Association is comprised of residents, property owners, business owners, and community-based organizations reflective of the diversity of Wynwood Norte. Together, we've built important working relationships with public agencies such as City Solid Waste, Net Office, Public Works to bring in new trash cans and new lighting to 2nd Avenue. Recognizing changes occurring in the neighborhood and effects of many years of disinvestment, Wynwood CEA's diverse stakeholders came together to identify strengths and weaknesses and to develop a shared vision for neighborhood protecting and enhancing the unique character. This community-led initiative resulted in the Wynwood Norte Community Vision Plan produced by Preservia Design, centered around 4 themes: going home, building home, going green, getting around. Through the support of our District 5 Commissioner, Chairman Kiana Hardiman, in November 2019, the City Commission directed the City Administration to study the implementation of the Community Vision Plan and return to the City Commission to present its recommendations. On June 29th, we proudly and successfully hosted with your City of Miami Planning Department a virtual town hall workshop with participants coming together to learn about the proposed changes being considered through the NRD2. The NRD2 district will be a positive tool to address important housing needs, reinvestment in community facilities, new infrastructure supporting small businesses to serve our community, creating jobs, and strategies for preserving and enhancing the neighborhood's character, giving the community's collective voice in shaping its future growth and reinvestment. In your backup materials, you should have received 75 letters of support, including from community leaders such as Father Menendez of Corpus Christi House and Luisa Rosas from the Puerto Rican Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for supporting Wynwood CEA and the Wynwood Norte Community Neighborhood Revitalization District as presented this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Todd Tragash. I have offices at 3526 North Miami Avenue. I've been a property owner since 1997, and I strongly urge you to approve the Wynwood Norte. It's a great master plan, the concept plan, and I think it will improve our neighborhood greatly. I do have one issue that I'd like to bring up. In the community vision plan, it showed that the T680 was going to be at the corner of 36th Street, North Miami Avenue, and it would go from 36th to 35th. I own 5 of the 8 lots on that block, and on the zoning that I see, you're in effect splitting one of my properties, and so it's half on, half off. And I would advocate to follow the vision plan for that block, to make the whole block cohesive. And I think it's important, not just me personally, but that's the corner pillar of this district. And I think the reason it was made like that was the type of building that will anchor that corner shouldn't be divided into two parcels. So that's my request to look at it further. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll ask the city to address that during their comments.
Thank you.
Anyone else at City Hall?
Yeah, one more guy. Hello. I'm Yoni Bornstein, president of the Wynwood Community Enhancement Association and local property owner in Wynwood Norte. I'm here to speak in strong support of Wynwood NRD2. I've been working and getting to know people in this neighborhood for over 5 years now. Many residents and business owners know me due to the positive experiences and exchanges we've had and shared over that time. I could stand here today and discuss all the amazing features and difficult challenges the neighborhood faces, But for the purposes of everyone getting home to be able to watch the Heat game, I'm going to only focus on one topic for today. The current conditions of Northwest 2nd Avenue or Main Street. Miami 21, as it stands today, may be excellent zoning practices for the majority of the city, but it is not working in this neighborhood. In fact, if you look back at Google Maps to 2007, which is the furthest it goes back, the same conditions existed. Nothing has changed other than, in fact, has probably continued to deteriorate. I want to provide some context of the current conditions of Northwest 2nd Avenue between 29th Street and 36th Street. Today, you have, there's been no new commercial or mixed-use development. You have skinny, unwalkable sidewalks. You have broken glass, empty alcohol bottles, other illegal paraphernalia, which litter the sidewalks throughout the neighborhood. You have unwelcoming or closed retail shops, and the majority of the avenue between 29th and 36th Street are empty lots with beat-up chain-link fences on both the east and west sides of the avenue. NRD2 will help activate this street, will help bring Main Street back. Furthermore, the activation of this street, the main commercial artery of Wynwood Norte, is so crucial to bringing jobs, opportunities, and goodwill back to the neighborhood. We
2
need,
minutes.
In conclusion,
lastly, after many years of our neighborhood being ignored while the surrounding areas have seen positive change and revitalization, the Wynwood Community Enhancement Association and Community-Led Vision Plan brought together people and business owners who've rolled up their sleeves to improve this neighborhood. We support 100% the Wynwood NRD2 because it creates a platform for improving the zoning and reinvesting into a vibrant Main Street. It's
Thank you.
about reinvesting in our parks, schools, local businesses, new housing, and respecting the past, and of course, looking forward to the future. Thank you to the Planning Department and to the PZAB for supporting the community and NRD2. Thank you very much.
thank you for coming out. Is there another speaker at City Hall?
Okay.
There are none, sir.
Okay, do we have any pre-recorded comments that we need to listen to?
Yes, we do. We have about 25 minutes of pre-recorded comments, and we do have two individuals who are waiting in queue to provide their comments live as well.
All right, so let's take the live callers first, and then we'll go into the pre-recorded comments. Thank you.
Phone operator 1.
Hello, sir. You are live with the commission. Please speak. Go ahead, sir. Sir, go ahead. You can speak. You are live with the commission.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much for the opportunity. My name is Jose Moreno, and the address is 239 Northwest 32nd Street. And basically, I just sorry, am I speaking to the commission?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
All right. Okay. Perfect. So basically, I just wanted to show my support for the plan. I had a few questions. I went through the presentations and the deck that was put forward, and all my questions were answered there, which was fantastic. I want to praise the plan. I want to praise the program. So full support for everything that is being put forward. Having said that, from now to then, we cannot let the neighborhood to fall into disarray. We should be on top of policing. We should be on top, which it's been neglected for a little bit. I just want to make that comment that we cannot let it go into disarray. We know we're going through tough times, but there are people there that live in, and they deserve like the treatment that we all agree they deserve. So that was my comment. And thank you very much for the opportunity. And again, full support for this plan. I think it's going to be transformational for not only for the neighborhood, but also for Miami. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, sir. You're live with the Planning and Zoning Appeals Board.
Thank you. Thank you for having my phone call. Hey, Larry, yes, we acquired this property about 2008. We remodeled the whole property and a 4-unit single family home. Like other people that have 401k, this is my retirement plan. I'm already 65 and basically we've been trying to plan with our retirement with that income. Here we tried to sell a property in Sweetwater in University City, and the sale of the property even went through, even though that the city rezoned the block where the property is. Now we are exposed to have higher taxes because now the zone is University City, and we cannot do nothing about it. We have 400 bed student housing next door. They had the chance to build it, but the block next to it is also University City. So they're being affected by the increase in taxes that they're going to come now in the near future. So how the change in the zoning will affect the area if some of the people, investors or owners, will not develop, or what? How you can address this?
Thank you. City staff will address their comments during their part of the presentation, so you can watch their response online.
Well, I didn't hear what he said. Hello?
Sir,
I didn't understand what he said at all.
Sir, the chair mentioned that city staff will be able to address your comments. Please stay tuned and watch as they go through their meeting. You'll be able to have your questions answered.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Please continue to participate.
Thank you.
And for the record, Mr. Mann is present.
Yes, sorry.
Sir, go ahead. You're live with the board.
Okay, hi. Richard Stroh, 3410 Northwest 5th Avenue, and this is about the whole plan. Thank you. This plan should be postponed. The part called coming home is grossly misleading. The new plan won't create new housing close to the cheaper housing already there. New building costs mean rent and sales prices will be out of reach for most current owners and residents. Property taxes will skyrocket. The city claims that the existing owners can get reduced taxes by showing the appraiser low rents. That's false. When land skyrockets, county appraisers switch their formula on neighboring properties. They value only the land, giving no value to the older buildings. Then you can't argue using your low rents to justify lower taxes. So the owners are forced to either greatly reduce to either greatly raise rents or sell. We've already seen planning's arguments during Miami 21's outreach that public benefits would result in cheaper housing. It hasn't. Edgewater had lots of cheaper housing there. Once upzoned, it disappeared. Also, the plan's public benefits element is affordable housing is only one choice for developers. Yet we know that they'll choose mostly from the other public benefit choices. Most government-owned land there isn't earmarked for affordable housing. Suggestions that it may be someday are meaningless. Also, your drawings don't show what's most likely to get built. It'll encourage assemblages, not buildings on small lots as you show. Note, T5 buildings can be 8 stories, not just the 5 stories you show. We've had a very vague 5-day outreach notice to read a plan many hundreds of pages long. Most residents don't know about these huge changes planned, and we're in the midst of a pandemic. Residents haven't been adequately notified or involved. The plan should be postponed with better outreach and more input. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, sir. You're on live with the Planning and Zoning Advisory Board, Appeals Board, excuse me. Please speak.
Well, I just tried to be registered to see what's going on. with the area without notice that they try to put like those area like a business area, something like that. And what is the consequence about that? What is the benefit that we can get? Or what is the, what's going to happen?
Sir, City, did we get his name and address, or Lisa's name?
We have the name of Jose Batista. No address. Mr. Batista, what area are you referring to, sir?
I live in Greenwood area, 246 Northwest 32nd Street.
Okay, if you could continue to watch the meeting, and you'll learn more about it during the staff's presentation.
Mr. Batista, please continue to watch the meeting and you'll learn through staff presentation. Thank you so much for participating.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Ma'am, go ahead. You're live with the board.
Yes, good evening. My name is Magali Hoyos. I am a resident at 400 Northwest 32nd Street in Miami, Florida, 33127. This is the Wynwood area. I'm calling on behalf of my brother, which is the owner of this property, Oscar Sixto Hoyos, myself, and of all the property owners here in the Wynwood area. My point here is that I don't want the businesses to close, but I also want the properties for the taxes to be lower. For example, all the property owners, including myself, I came in 1968 from Cuba with my parents and my brothers, and we are Wynwood. We do not want the property taxes to be raised, because all the people that live here in the Wynwood area have sacrificed all their lives to have their property and to pay for the property. And now almost all of them are elderly people, and it's not fair that they raise their taxes. Another point that I have, the 2nd Avenue between 29th Street and 36th Street, everything is dirty. They should clean up all the places here in the Wynwood area, because we are Wynwood, so therefore, being us Wynwood, we want Wynwood to continue as Wynwood. We don't mind that the businesses go up. We don't mind that they open business. We don't have no problem with that, but we just want our Wynwood area to continue clean, and for the property owners, not for them to raise their taxes. That's my point. God bless all of you, and thank you for the opportunity that you have given me.
Thank you.
Phone operator 3, is that the last caller? We'll take that as a yes. So Chair, we have the pre-recorded comments.
All right, you can go ahead, please.
Ms. Alvarez, if you can hear me, please share the screen and the audio.
Can you hear it?
No, and we cannot see it.
And Wynwood, in the heart of Wynwood, Miami. I'm referencing the Wynwood Norte Neighborhood Revitalization District, and I am basically calling 2700 North Miami Avenue in Wynwood, in the heart of Wynwood, Miami. I'm referencing the Wynwood Norte Neighborhood Revitalization District, and I am basically calling to provide my support. As a community member of this area, living in Wynwood, and also being a proud board of director for the Bakehouse Art Complex, I am very much an enthusiastic supporter of the NRD-2 Community Vision Plan. Not only because of the fact that I believe in the arts and the fact that creative community is the lifeblood of this city, but also as the CEO for one of the fastest growing private company startups in Florida, Arteza Inc. I'm the chief executive officer there. And this community, this creator community, is the lifeblood not only for what I believe is the heart and soul of the community, but it's also the heart and soul for being a platform of change for the world. So anyway, I wanted to make sure that I left my endorsement. Any questions, please give me a call. Again, the name is Brenda Freeman. Thank you very much.
Hi there, my name is Nathaniel Sandler. I live at 1900 Meridian Avenue, apartment 401, Miami Beach, Florida 33139. I am the founding director of a nonprofit organization called Bookleggers Library, which mission is to permeate Miami with books. We give away books everywhere. We give away books on the street. We give away books to children's hospitals, homeless shelters, prisons, as well as bars, parks, galleries, and museums. And I'm calling on behalf of the support for the Bakehouse's plan at the Neighborhood Revitalization District in Wynwood Norte. We believe that Bookleggers it is housed in Bakehouse, and we believe that Bakehouse has a vision for the future, and we think that the affordable housing and the current art studios will be wonderful for the neighborhood, and we support that. Thank you so much for listening.
Good morning. My name is Lawrence Klein, K-L-I-N-E. My address is 1581 Brickell Avenue, apartment 2202, Miami, Florida, 33129. And this voicemail is in reference to support of the Wynwood Norte Neighborhood Revitalization District. In all transparency, I am a board member of the Bakehouse Art Complex, and this is vital to the future success of an even more thriving Bakehouse Art Complex and the ability to bring affordable housing into our neighborhood, workforce housing, affordable housing. So these are two most critical points facing South Florida will be sea level rise and the affordability of housing so that all have an opportunity to live in a vital urban center. Thank you so much for consideration.
My name is Claudio Righi. I live at 185 Southwest 7th Street, Unit 4402, Miami, Florida, 33130. I'm speaking in support of the agenda item on the Wynwood Norte Neighborhood Revitalization Project. I am a City of Miami resident. I'm an attorney. My law office is also in the city at 1200 Brickell Avenue. More importantly, I'm a member of the board and the secretary of the Bakehouse Art Complex, which is part of the Wynwood Norte Revitalization District. The approval of that revitalization district would make the northern part of Wynwood the best part of Wynwood. This is caring urban planning. The goal here is not to increase property values to the max and to force out lower and moderate income residents. The goal here is to maintain the residential spirit of the area while improving the available and affordable living space. At the Bakehouse Art Complex, we have thought long and hard how to make our property most useful to the residents and to the artists in Miami. We have offered low-rent artist studio space and have attracted hundreds of young artists who might otherwise have left Florida altogether. But our facility is an old industrial bakery at the end of its useful life. It needs to be restored. We have developed and refined our vision for the future over years and have decided that the best way to fulfill the promise, the goals of our nonprofit organization is to restore the artists' workspaces and to create an entire campus where artists can live and work. It is crucial to us that we
remain part of the neighborhood fabric, because that is the very reason why Bakehouse fires are out there. The NRD designation would be an important step forward towards the goal of creating a long-lasting spark to retain local residents and artists in the area. Please vote in favor of approval of the Wynwood Norte Neighborhood Revitalization District. This will forever be a source of pride for all of us. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Celia Perez, and I'm a resident of Wynwood for over 40 years. We're totally against the new plan zoning for the area. It will destroy the area, and also it'll displace hundreds of residents that we've been here and call Wynwood home. Our address is 144 Northwest 30th Street. That's 144 Northwest 30th Street, and we are opposed of the new zoning that will destroy Wynwood and the whole area, and for the benefit of developers.
Hello, my name is Daniel Villa. I'm a local filmmaker, and I live at 144 Northwest 30th Street. I was born and raised in Wynwood, and 4 generations of my family have called Wynwood home since 1960. I'm calling because I'm against amending Ordinance 13114 and 10544. In 2017, the PZAB rejected Westdale developers' request to rezone over a dozen duplex and single-family homes for commercial use here in Wynwood. At the time, board member Anthony Parrish stated that this would definitely accelerate the pace of change in Wynwood. City planner Ryan Shedd said that Westdale Wynwood could displace low-income households. And both city planner Efren Nunez and Ryan Shedd told the board that approving the zoning request was inconsistent with Miami 21. Here we are 3 years later, and all of the same players are behind this new request to rezone, which is much larger in scope now and will affect the entire residential community. It's no coincidence that a Westdale partner is also a Wynwood Norte Association director. While admittedly this plan is much better than the one that was submitted in 2017, I still feel that the end result would be the same. Widespread displacement of the working, poor, and elderly, and the gentrification of Wynwood once and for all. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Leah Yapar Pena. My address is 2001 Meridian Avenue, apartment 507, Miami Beach, Florida 23139. I am calling in my capacity as a member of the board of the Bakehouse Art Complex in Wynwood Norte, and I'm calling in reference to the item of the Neighborhood Rehabilitation District, Wynwood Norte. My comment is as follows. I support the creation of this Neighborhood Rehabilitation District. There has been a lot of work done to understand what the needs of the local community are, including affordable housing and additional civic uses, expansion of existing facilities. I believe that there is need for more affordable housing options, and that this Neighborhood Rehabilitation District will help further those goals. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Edgar Mariani. I live in Wynwood Norte at 160 Northwest 33rd Street. I'm speaking in support of the agenda item for Wynwood Norte Revitalization District. The reason I'm in favor is that I believe that the higher density that would be allowed will make the building costs more affordable, and therefore the rents as well. We're located walking distance to Design District, Midtown, and Wynwood here. The workforce in those areas, in those neighborhoods, desperately need local housing. This change to higher density will encourage redevelopment. We have a lot of vacant lots and really run-down houses in the area. So once they start to be rebuilt or built on, this will beautify the neighborhood. It will give us more affordable housing options, and everything will be up to the new code. Hurricane proof, fire proof, many benefits.
My name is Karen Antunes. I live in 579 Northwest 35th Street. I'm really excited about the project Wynwood Norte because it's gonna bring a community more organized. It's going to be safer. And I'm looking forward because this is a benefit for all of us, all of the neighbors, and it's an improvement for all of us and also for society. Hi, my name is Mariana Gutierrez. I live in 535 Northwest 35th Street. I fully support Wynwood Norte. I love the way that we as neighbors could actively participate in the improvement of our community. I hope that this is set as an example to revitalize other neighborhoods in Miami. It was really important for us to be part of this project. I think that all together we have made a beautiful project focusing on what is important for our community while maintaining the character of our neighborhood, but at the same time making it more attractive for new projects that will improve our community. I hope that the zoning department loves this project as much as we all do. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Claudia Gold, and I live at 240 Northwest 25th Street in Wynwood. I am calling today in support of the Wynwood Norte Neighborhood Revitalization District. Wynwood Norte is a distinct neighborhood with a unique character and history. Establishing a revitalization district is the best way to ensure that it is preserved and enhanced going forward. In particular, efforts to improve retail corridors and public space such as parks would encourage more pedestrians and better use of the space. Furthermore, the public benefits program that will be established as part of the NRD2 will provide an ongoing funding source to improve the area. Thank you very much for your support.
Hello, this is Frank Carlton. I live in Northwest 34th Street and Northwest 3rd Avenue with my wife for many years. I'm calling for the September 30th Planning Board meeting to support the Wynwood Norte Neighborhood Revitalization District. I attended the town hall in June. I was very pleased with the presentation. It was thoughtful and insightful into the needs of this neighborhood. The amenities here, the housing is all good. There's very little housing for families as they're growing. We've got 2 grandchildren that live with us. And what is this future holding for them? Sidewalks need repair. The schools, they really don't have enough attention, enough families. My town here is really just for the near term. And the question is, will this neighborhood be a place where families can grow and be healthy and safe and come together? So I support the association. I appreciate all the ways they've reached out to us, and I hope this board will approve this item. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Greg Leon. I'm behind me. My pieces, I support NRD2. The best thing I can happen to the community. We bring in life back to this area with art and color. Coming soon, Culture Garden in Wynwood Norte. Stay tuned for more.
Hello, my name is Maureen Gragg, Gragg. I live at 11015 Curacao Avenue in Coral Gables, 33156. I'm calling to support the Wynwood Norte Neighborhood Revitalization District because affordable housing is critical for not just the city of Miami, but the entire of Miami-Dade County. If we do not have affordable housing for people to live in, we won't be able to support our entire economy. People need to be able to live here. And if teachers and firefighters and policemen and people from all walks of life cannot afford to live here, they won't. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Elisa Turner, 4966 Hammock Lake Drive, Coral Gables, 33156. I'm calling to express my ardent support for legislation to create the Wynwood Norte Neighborhood Revitalization District. I think it's
very important. I think it's one of the first ideas. It's a great idea to mitigate the destructive effects of gentrification while providing more affordable housing. And of course, I support all the wonderful things that the Big House Art Complex is doing under the direction of Kathy Leff. Thank you. Hello, this is Lisa Turner, 4966 Hammock Lake Drive, Coral Gables, Florida, 33156. I called earlier, and yes, I know I don't live in the city of Miami, but as a Miami-Dade County resident, I know that we all suffer the effects of gentrification in Overdrive and the lack of affordable housing. I am calling in to support the legislation to create the Wynwood Norte Neighborhood Revitalization District. Thank you for taking my call.
My name is Kathy Leff. I live at 1000 Venetian Way, apartment 706, City, Miami. I'm acting director of Big House Art Complex, 561 Northwest 32nd Street, and a member of the board of the Wynwood Community Enhancement Association. I'm calling to support the legislation before you today to create a new NRD2 for Wynwood Norte. I started my public career service more than 40 years ago with the county and then City of Miami, working from the mid-1970s and late 80s as assistant director of the Community Development Department. Wynwood was one of the 8 city target areas I worked in, and in fact, I was the staff person assigned to administer a city grant that enabled a group of artists to purchase their own site, now Big House, for art making, and to ensure artists would always have an affordable working home in our city. Today, Big House is the largest nonprofit-owned artist living site in the city's urban core, an affordable working home to 100 artists. We have always been aware of our location in one of Miami's most beloved historic neighborhoods, into which we have a track record of both service and engagement. In 2008, Big House, along with other longtime and newer stakeholders, joined together to address the current conditions of Wynwood Norte and to envision our future potential as our population would drop from 18,000 at its peak in the 70s to roughly 4,000 today. This resulted in the Community Vision Plan, which has formed the basis of this proposed NRD2. The NRD2 supports our community vision to preserve the cultural heritage and character of the neighborhood while enabling opportunities for economic development, population growth, and revitalization. It mitigates displacement and incentivizes additional affordable and workforce housing development and preservation of legacy buildings. Its approval also will allow Big House to add affordable housing for artists to our underutilized 2.3-acre site, to renovate our historic bakery building for art making and cultural engagement, and fulfill our board and artists' vision to create a vibrant, live-work, community-engaged cultural campus serving Wynwood Norte and beyond. I am supporting again and hope you will support the passage of the legislation for NRD2. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Juan Matos. I live at 528 Northwest 47th Street. I'm calling on behalf of the approval of the creation of the Neighborhood Revitalization District for Wynwood Norte. I have been a resident artist at the Big House Art Complex for the past year and a half, and I'm calling to support the Neighborhood Revitalization Project on behalf of the Big House. This project will not only provide the neighborhood with the space and opportunity necessary to grow and give back, but it has the ability to become a fundamental hub for Miami as a whole. As artists, we are cultural producers, and we reflect the environment around us. Miami is filled with inspiration, culture, and important stories that should be shared, but unfortunately, many of the city's own cultural producers can't even afford to live here. By approving the Neighborhood Revitalization Project, it will allow Big House to achieve its vision to add affordable housing for artists while maintaining its historic building. This will give artists in the neighborhood the ability to become more engaged, more intertwined, and working symbiotically to make a healthier, more dynamic, and culturally enriched community. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Christian Nova, and I'm calling to show support for the September 30th PZAD meeting for the zoning changes in Wynwood Norte, or NRD2. I have owned a home and I have lived for many years in Wynwood, and I've also seen how the surrounding areas have grown throughout the last 10 to 15 years. And, you know, our area in Wynwood Norte hasn't really grown much and hasn't really received much love from the city or the community. And I think that it would be really good to have more
for people, for families, future families in the area. At the current moment, we don't have a lot of attention and we don't have a lot of eyes, and our neighborhood is not the safest, and it would definitely benefit from having some attention poured into it and love, because our streets, they're not really the safest at the moment, and the people drive down the streets at a really, really fast rate. It's crashes. I'm actually the owner of the house where on 31st and First Avenue, where a car that was running away from the cops crashed into my house. People don't follow the stop signs or respect them at all. So we have some development coming in, affordable housing, and I think it's going to be good for the community. It'll be good for families in the future, and it'll be good for us in the present as well, because we'll start to get more activities, more eyes, more people in the area, single families, young millennials like me. We could actually start to afford some of the places, because the rents in the area are actually very, very expensive at the moment, because we've seen the whole city grow. So I'm here to show my support for the NRD.
Hello, my name is Dr. David Polensky, 1040 Biscayne Boulevard, apartment 3202, Miami, Florida 33132. I wish to speak in support of PZAB 1 through 3, which is the NRD2 agenda items for this evening. As some of you know, I was very involved in the formation of the Wynwood bid and chaired its Planning and Zoning Committee for a number of years as it went through its NRD process. And I have to say, in every respect, the Norte process has been remarkable, even better in many respects. We didn't have the luxury of a vision plan at that time, but the vision plan speaks to the character of the Norte neighborhood and its aspirations, and it does so in a way which is really, really innovative and will help to create connectivity between the Wynwood South and Wynwood Norte communities. So I hope that you'll be enthusiastic about this agenda item, as I am. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Nicole Snell from 1161 Northwest 7th Court. I reside there for about 19 years now. I'm a single mom, raised my 5 kids there. Now I'm raising my grandchildren. I have 2 little girls that's under 3 years old. And I'm opposed of that. I do not agree with that change. Please understand I have children there, and I'm a single woman, and I reside there, and I do not want any changes made. Thank you. Have a great day.
Hello, my name is Hernan Guerrero Applewhite. I'm a resident at 3637 Oak Avenue in City, Miami, Florida 33133. I am submitting public comments for the September 30th PZAB agenda in support of future land use and zoning map changes for the creation of the Wynwood North Neighborhood Revitalization District. I am calling to speak in support of this as someone that has a undergraduate degree in geography, a master's in interracial planning from Patterson Institute in Brooklyn, New York, and a master's in architecture from
residente de aquí de Wynwood. Mi nombre es Ana Vila. Llevo 30 años viviendo aquí en esta área y estoy en contra del proyecto de los edificios que van a hacer aquí. Ya estamos rodeándonos de edificios. No tenemos parqueo ya en la calle propia, a donde vivimos todos, yo y nuestra familia. Así que me opongo a este proyecto. Mi nombre es Ana Vila, vivo en el 144 Northwest 30 Calle. Gracias por atenderme y espero que esto se resuelva bien para esta comunidad, que llevamos tantos años en este barrio. Gracias, bye bye.
And Chair, we have a Spanish language interpreter present who can translate the last public comment.
Go ahead, please.
Good evening, I'm the Spanish interpreter. Good morning, I'm a resident of Wynwood. My name is Ana Vila. I've been living here in this area for 30 years and I'm against the project for new buildings here. We're all surrounded by buildings already. We don't have any place to park here in our own street where my family and I live, where all of us live. So I oppose this project. My name is Ana Vila. I live at 144 Northwest 30th Street. Thank you for this opportunity, and I hope this issue has a good outcome for the community that has been living in this neighborhood for so many years. Thank you.
Thank you. One more final check. Is there anyone at City Hall before I close public hearing? I'm going to take that as a no, so I'm going to close public hearing and we'll turn it over to the city.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And before I begin, I'd like to submit two things on the record. The first is a letter of recommendation from the Community Association, which wanted to see the submitted files before making a formal recommendation as a board. And the second is a letter of recommendation from Michael Liu, the Director of Public Housing and Community Development for the county. Is that all right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So I'll go ahead and send that to Olga. For the record, my name is Joseph Eisenberg with the City of Miami Planning Department. I'd like to thank all of you for agreeing to have this special meeting. This is a large and complex item that's helpful to have on a standalone agenda, but it also may have been challenging to have this if it were to bump into subsequent agenda items for other meetings. So this is very helpful. I know that this was unexpected, so thank you again for having this special meeting. I'm here to present three items, all related to the NRD2, the Wynwood Norte Neighborhood Revitalization District. These three items are related to the Wynwood Norte neighborhood, previously known as the Little San Juan neighborhood in the 1950s through the 70s. Some of that Puerto Rican influence is left, but it's still very strongly felt throughout the neighborhood. This neighborhood is experiencing fairly substantial development pressure from all directions. The Wynwood NRD1, or the Wynwood Arts District to the south, Midtown to the east, the Design District to the northeast, and Allapattah to the west across I-95. The neighborhood is entirely within the Wynwood Edgewater Net District. It's in Commission District 5, County Commission District 3, and it's approximately 141.58 acres in size. What is a neighborhood revitalization district? This was a designation that was created for the NRD1 in 2015. It's an overlay district that uses Miami 21 as a base for development and crafts new regulations with things like legacy structure programs, specified public benefit programs, enhancements to commercial character, street master plans, that sort of thing. But really it's intended to grab the culturally important elements of a neighborhood to enhance those through the future phases of development for that neighborhood. You can see the NRD1 on the left-hand side. The vertical development on the screen shows the scale of effectively the entire neighborhood. It's an 8-story to 12-story neighborhood as proposed. It was very much driven by property owners, business owners, whereas the NRD2, which we're reviewing today, is much more driven by community association and community members, which is reflected in the scaling that you see in the graphic on the right, which is from the community vision plan you heard mentioned several times in the public testimony that you heard. This is looking to the south. You have 29th Street here, where you have some higher intensity development that gradually scales down to a residential restricted core, as they have today. This process really began, as Adriana said, the first live public commenter, in August of 2018, when a handful of community stakeholders got together to discuss things like new streetlights, new garbage cans, that sort of thing. It evolved into the foundation of the Wynwood Community Enhancement Association. Some key dates on this screen are between September of 2018 and September of 2019, there was a year of regular public engagement with members of the community to create a community vision plan that was in November of 2019 adopted via resolution by City Commission, directing the city to work on this plan. Since about January of 2020, we've been working to bring this NRD2 and its constituent future land use map designation change and rezoning to fruition. We also had a virtual town hall workshop that was widely noticed on June 29th. About 50 people attended. We got some good feedback, which was folded into the NRD2 documents and reflected in what you're reviewing today. This is the Wynwood Norte neighborhood, outlined in the yellow line. The boundaries are generally I-95 on the west, 195 on the north, North Miami Avenue on the east, and 29th Street on the south. The places where it jogs off of 29th Street are because the southern boundary is coterminous with the northern boundary of the NRD1. So that's why it's a little bit jagged in places. And I know some of you have been to this neighborhood, but some people may not have. So we're going to take a little trip around the neighborhood looking at these locations. So location number 1, the corner of 36th Street and 5th Avenue. Looking to the west, you can see the terminus or a jog of 36th Street and I-95's impact on the neighborhood in the distance. Looking south, you can see 5th Avenue is a fairly wide right-of-way with a planted median. Looking east, you can see that the T68 zone property today has some fairly substantial vertical development. And then looking north, you can see the impact of I-195. It's important to note that it's T6 zoning here, and you can see that it's already been developed to that transect zone's intentions in several places. Now moving to the east along 36th Street, we're at the corner of 36 North Miami Avenue. Looking south, you can see the defined commercial character of Midtown on the left-hand side of the picture. You have a lot of chain stores here. You have Target, Ross, basically every category of commercial you can imagine is represented either there or on the other side of Miami Avenue between here and 29th Street. And then looking north on the right-hand side of that picture, you can see the imposition and the proximity of this neighborhood to the Miami Design District with the Design District Garage right there. Moving to the south, we're now at the northern border of the NRD1. On the top picture looking west, you can see that there's still mostly low-scale buildings, but some redevelopment happening on this corridor with the presence of a lot of street art, which is characteristic of the neighborhood to the south. And then looking to the east, you can see Wynwood Gateway being redeveloped on the left-hand side, the southeastern corner of Wynwood Norte's neighborhood, but slightly outside. And you can also see the impact of vertical development of Midtown across the way. Those are those tall buildings in the distance and on the left. Now, heading to the far western extent of the neighborhood at spot 4, we're going to look to the west, and we can see what the condition is up against I-95, one of the underpasses through I-95, of which there are several throughout the neighborhood. Not a particularly inviting place. There is a similar condition for several underpasses along I-195. And then from this spot looking northeast, you can see the Bakehouse Art Complex, a cultural anchor within the neighborhood. Now moving on to number 5, this is the heart of the residential core of the neighborhood. The predominant residential character of this neighborhood is low-scale duplexes or single-family homes, but there is a fair amount of small multifamily development as well, which you can see in the upper picture. And looking the other direction to the east, you can see that there's some heavily vegetated properties, but the bulk of the street plantings, the tree plantings in the neighborhood are on private property rather than in the right-of-way. And then moving on to 2nd Avenue, this is the main commercial spine of the neighborhood. On the picture on the top of the screen, looking south, you can see the neighborhood's grocery store and some commercial, and then you can see some more assorted commercial looking to the north. Something important to note here, there is a substantial amount of vacant property throughout the neighborhood, especially on 2nd Avenue. Wynwood Norte is comprised of 5 elements, 3 of which are here before you as the 3 agenda items: a future land use map amendment, rezoning, and the NRD2 text itself. There are 2 elements that go to City Commission only, which are a Chapter 35 and Chapter 62 amendment. Those two items create a localized parking trust fund and a localized public benefit trust fund to ensure that parking dollars and public benefit dollars that are collected from development within this neighborhood are applied and stay within this neighborhood. On the left, you'll see the existing future land use map, and on the right, you'll see the proposed future land use map. It's important to note that the future land use change as proposed principally does two things. The first is it increases the base residential density throughout the neighborhood to effectively 150 dwelling units per acre everywhere. And the future land use designation can also be use restrictive. You'll see that the central core of the neighborhood, which is today duplex residential, remains residential restricted. This graphic calls out the individual changes and the individual areas and parcels that are being changed throughout the neighborhood. The largest change by acreage is change A, which is duplex residential to high density multifamily residential. It's nearly half of the future land use map change itself. And there are some other changes proposed as well. But again, the area, the core of the residential neighborhood that is residential restricted today is remaining residential restricted after the proposed future land use map amendment. We also did some demographic analysis looking at the 4 census block groups that comprise the Wynwood Norte neighborhood. It's important to note that the block group on the far right-hand side of the screen, 26001, is mostly comprised of Midtown, and a small amount of it hangs over the boundary into the Wynwood NRD2, which skews the number somewhat. And here's a comparison of the block groups, the 4 block groups that make up the NRD2, and citywide data. The poverty data is pretty similar to citywide numbers. Wynwood Norte is a younger median age place. The total residential units comprise less than 1% of the total households in the city. And the incomes in some tracts are higher and in some tracts lower than the city median income. There are 1,485 total households in the neighborhood, 77.3% of which are renter households. And looking at the homestead data, the homesteaded property data in a couple of ways. When you look at the total number of properties that are designated residential, 69.1% of the residential properties have a homestead designation. If you look at that in terms of percentage of total residential units, 22.7% of the total residential units in the neighborhood have homestead designations. We'll now unpack several land use policies that we assessed in assessing the future land use map to change as proposed. The first is policy LU 1.6.4, which involves level of service. The city tested multiple levels of service and found all those level services to pass. And several elements. The city zoning ordinance provides for protection of all areas of the city from the encroachment of incompatible land uses, and the land use pattern that generally exists today in terms of residential restriction and commercial ability is largely maintained through the proposed future land use map change. The adverse impacts of future land uses in adjacent areas that disrupt or degrade public health and safety or natural man-made amenities. Again, maintaining the existing pattern of land uses. Transportation policies that divide or fragment established neighborhoods. Where the increase in density empowered by the future land use designation change is supportive of the transportation, particularly the public transportation that's present in the neighborhood today, and the degradation of public open space, environment, and ecology. If anything, the enhanced tree plantings that are required through the NRD2 and the public benefit that's created to create additional public open space is likely to enhance public open space rather than be a degradation of public open space. We found that both of those land use policies are found to be consistent. And now we'll move on to the rezoning. The rezoning is fairly similar in terms of scale with respect to the before and after. Again, the residential core, which is today zone T30, is being proposed to go primarily to T4R with residential restriction. And then here's a call out of all the individual changes, their acreages and the number of parcels. And then one of the key elements of any rezoning in the city of Miami is appropriate transitions in scale and intensity. And as you can see with these changes, we've intentionally layered in scale that scales down from the bounding streets to the core, the residential core of the neighborhood. So moving south to north, we have 12 stories outside the NRD2. We have 8 stories within the NRD2, 6 stories within the NRD2, 4 stories within the NRD2, 6 stories, 12 stories, 6 stories, and then the scaling is similar going east to west. The NRD2 also changes how some of the transect zones behave. So on the left, you can see T4 in Miami 21. It's a 3-story zoning designation with 60% lot coverage. T4, as proposed in Wynwood Norte, is a 4-story designation that can go up to 80% lot coverage. The only way to unlock that area in yellow is providing the city public benefits in the form of 10% of the units, income restricted as 2 bedrooms at or below 80% AMI, and 10% of the units income restricted at or below 100% AMI. And those all have to be 2-bedroom units, which we know are necessary for the families that live in the neighborhood today. T5 in Miami 21 is shown on the left-hand side. You have 5 stories by right, 1 bonus story abutting D1. Proposed for Wynwood Norte, T5L has 5 stories by right, 1 bonus story. T5O has 5 stories by right, 3 bonus stories, unless it's within 500 feet of T3. In that case, T5O is proposed to have 5 stories by right and 1 bonus story. And then you have T680. The by right FLR is displayed in the blue on these graphics. The by right FLR of 5 produces that size of building. So both before and after you have a by right FLR of 5. Existing in Miami 21, you have a 25% FLR bonus. In Wynwood Norte, we're proposing a 50% FLR bonus, but we're scaling down the podium of the building. So rather than an 8-story podium like you see on the left-hand side in Miami 21, you rather have a 6-story podium and a 6-story tower, which helps to take some of the balance down, which is really the massive element of the building that tends to really press on abutting properties. Wynwood Norte also proposes several new uses: art galleries by right in T5 and T6, manufacturing-enabled retail by warrant in T50 and T6, open-air flex use by warrant in T4L, T5, and T6, community gardens by warrant in T4, T5, and T6, privately owned public space by warrant in T4L, CI, and CS by right in T5 and T6, co-working by right in T4L, T5, and T6 by exception in CI, and retail merchandising units that must be included as a part of an open-air flex use and are permitted in the same way that the open-air flex use is. It's important to note that many of these new uses are permitted by warrant in certain transect zones, and we changed the noticing requirements in the NRD2. So we're no longer noticing immediately abutting properties. We're noticing all property owners within 250 feet of a proposed warrant to help better inform this neighborhood. And then our rezoning criteria are as follows. Criteria 1, I'll go over some of the Miami 21 goals, objectives, and policies. One of the development goals is rebuilding the city's commercial corridors to function as mixed-use transit-oriented walkable centers for adjacent residential neighborhoods. The pattern of zoning as proposed accomplishes that. A diversity of land uses should be distributed throughout the city to enable a variety of economic activity, workplace, residence, recreation, and civic activity. Again, the robust mixed-use land use pattern that we have in the neighborhood is further enhanced by the proposed zoning, and transportation corridors should be planned and reserved in coordination with land use. I think the proximity of this neighborhood to high-quality transit is only enhanced by increasing the residential density that has access to those transit enhancements. Next, the need and justification for the proposed change, including changed or changing conditions that make the passage of the proposed change necessary. The community vision plan laid out a very good case for the changing conditions in the neighborhood, and this neighborhood got together and really felt that change is coming, whether they want it or not. So they might as well get together, create a community vision plan, and take charge of this neighborhood. And then lastly, the change may only be made to the next intensity transect zone or by SAP. And all the zoning changes as proposed are successional in nature. And we mentioned before the transition in intensity and scale. And lastly, we'll talk about the Wynwood Norte NRD2 itself. This is the overlay district, the changed rules and regulations that are built out of the NRD2 community vision plan. There were 4 foundational elements of the community vision plan: coming home, building home, going green, and getting around. Coming home is really focusing upon the unique cultural identity and network of local businesses that exist in the neighborhood, focusing on the community as a multi-use, multi-generational space. One way that we're doing that is by amenitizing vacant property, particularly vacant property along Northwest 2nd Avenue. The idea is to enliven these unused spaces, which are a concern of many neighborhood stakeholders, with temporary activations, community gardens, little flea markets, public spaces, those sorts of things. One of the people who spoke complained about 2nd Avenue being a little bit dirty. This is exactly the sort of activation that isn't necessarily going to trigger redevelopment, but will put eyes on the street and have people begin to invest in the street again. Next, Wynwood Norte is very protective of the existing commercial character. The NRD2 creates micro retail and co-working definitions. Micro retail is any commercial space that is 500 square feet or less, which is prototypical of some of the small and medium-sized commercial establishments in the neighborhood today. And if a developer chooses to utilize micro retail or co-working for their public benefit square footage, they have to provide that micro retail space to a new incubated business coming from within the neighborhood or relocating an existing business from within the neighborhood. And the co-working use has to provide co-working memberships to residents of Wynwood Norte. We've also introduced a shopkeeper residential typology, which is similar to what you see on the right-hand side of the screen. This is very consistent with traditional neighborhood downtowns, traditional urbanism. The idea is you get a 25-foot first story if you do retail. Most of that space is wasted. You can maybe do a small mezzanine space. But if you're willing to put a residential unit in the front, so the first floor is still 25 feet, but the ground is commercial and you have residential above, and you make that residential available to either employees or owners of the ground floor business, you can utilize that full floor for parking or some other additional use. And lastly, we have a different legacy structure here than we did for the Wynwood NRD1. For the NRD1, the legacy structure program was all about protecting warehouses that were great opportunities for mural art or industrial vestiges of the past. In Wynwood Norte, it's much more about character and affordability. So the three big categories for legacy structures are religious or cultural assets in the neighborhood, existing or new affordable housing, and local businesses. What a legacy structure designation means is that once you're designated a legacy structure by the Urban Development Review Board, you can sell the air rights or the unused development capacity above your building to other developments, new developments throughout the neighborhood. And you take the money that you gain from that and you invest it back into the building, which is a great way to create some internal subsidy for affordable housing and to make capital improvements in commercial establishments without passing that cost through to the tenant. Something else that came up through our public outreach is the sense that the neighborhood stakeholders who engage in this community visioning process felt that this ought to be the definitive community vision for the neighborhood because the outreach was so extensive, which is why there's an explicit SAP prohibition for the NRD2. Then we have building home. Building home is about creating diverse and context-sensitive housing types with a real focus on displacement mitigation. That's something we heard a couple times from people giving public comments. That was really in our mind when crafting this district. So an important backstop, and it's difficult to overstate this, an important backstop to displacement concerns is the high percentage of publicly and institutionally owned land in the neighborhood. So the largest single landowner is Miami-Dade County with PHCD, Public Housing and Community Development, owning a good portion of that. The county has 154 affordable housing units in the neighborhood today. After the NRD2 rezoning, they could build potentially 1,350 affordable housing units. So to put that in context, when you consider that 150 of the existing renters in the neighborhood already live in county affordable housing, you have about 1,000 existing renters, and the county has the capacity to build 1,200 new affordable housing units, which is very important when you consider any potential displacement. So this is a picture of a new construction, a new single-family home that was developed in the neighborhood. Displacement concerns kept coming up, and there are some concerns that with any density increase, you may encourage gentrification and displacement. What this particular redevelopment shows is that you don't need to do anything to have unaffordable housing come into a neighborhood and to encourage development. This particular property traded in 2015 or 2016 for a little over $500,000. And if your starting land cost is $500,000, there's a very slim chance that this sort of housing is going to be affordable or attainable to the people who live in this neighborhood. Absent this community vision plan and the NRD2, the planning department's concern is that this neighborhood will go the direction of West Coconut Grove, where highly restrictive zoning in a highly desirable neighborhood leads to the construction of low density housing that's totally unaffordable to the people who live here today. And lastly, we'll talk about the missing middle. So the graphic in the upper left-hand corner shows what Miami 21 was really designed, or one of the things that Miami 21 was really designed to help prevent, which is low-scale residential neighborhoods immediately abutting higher intensity, higher scale, higher density development. And you do that by that happy guy on the right-hand graphic in the middle, the missing middle. So in Miami 21, we talk about the transect zone scaling up from T3 to T4 to T5 to T6. But we don't see a lot of T4 and T5 being redeveloped in the city. And the reason for that is likely the relatively low residential densities that are permitted in those transect zones. The places that we see T4 development happening is in East Little Havana through the Attainable Mixed Income Program, which allows a doubling of density from 36 to 72 units per acre. And the place we see most of the T5 being redeveloped is in the Wynwood NRD1, where you have 150 dwelling units per acre. T4, which comprises the residential core of the neighborhood, actually has some mechanisms to discourage assembly. So this is intended to be an initiative for small scale developers, of which there's a dearth in the city of Miami. Each property has a maximum number of dwelling units that you can build. So if you have a 5,000 to 7,500 square foot property, you can build a maximum of 16 residential units. If you have larger than a 7,500 square foot property, you can build 24 residential units. So even if you assemble up to 20,000 square feet, you can still only build those original 24 dwelling units. So you're much more incentivized to build smaller scale incremental development that's more in keeping with the rhythm and the scale of the neighborhood. We're also proposing an increase of the small building parking exemption from 10,000 square feet to 20,000 square feet by waiver when co-located with transit. This is typical of the small multifamily you find in the neighborhood today, as evidenced by the picture on the right-hand side. As I said before, the T4 bonus program incentivizes needed unit types and AMI levels, and we also discourage demolitions. So in order to receive a demo permit in this neighborhood, you have to have an approved building permit or post a fairly substantial bond. We quite often see that speculative resellers will knock down perfectly good housing in a neighborhood and market the bare land. This is intended to prevent that from happening. We also have a surplus parking program proposed for T6. So in T6, the neighborhood, which is the 36th Street corridor, potentially one floor of additional parking will not count against FLR, but that parking has to be used for other properties' surplus parking. That can be in the form of either public parking or off-site leases. Then we have Going Green. Going Green, this is an image of the NRD1 Streetscape Master Plan, which you all took a look at and reviewed 2 weeks ago. This is obviously something that's calibrated to the arts and cultural vibe of Wynwood. This is not what we would do for Wynwood Norte, but there is a placeholder for future engagement to ensure that the public realm, not just the streetscape, but also the planting palette, is created in a way that it helps to really define the neighborhood through streetscape. And then lastly, getting around. So getting around is the element of the community vision plan that the city probably has the least direct influence over, because so many mass transportation functions belong to the county, but we're still able to influence it somewhat. So when you look at the NRD2 area, especially the NRD2 area over time, substantially fewer people in the NRD drive to work versus Miami, Miami-Dade County, and the state of Florida. So 72% of people in Wynwood Norte drive to work versus 78% for the city of Miami from 2009 to 2013. And then 2014 to 2018, that decreased by about 10%. That's reflected in the number of households in Wynwood Norte with no cars whatsoever. About 40% of the households in Wynwood Norte don't even have one automobile. You can see that one of the numbers down there is about 10%. That's the block group that spans across Midtown Miami and Wynwood Norte, and it's likely that's artificially suppressed by the car ownership rates in Midtown. Wynwood Norte as a neighborhood has great access to mass transportation. You can see the Allapattah Metro Rail station on the left-hand side of the screen. In the yellow X, and the red X on the right-hand side of the screen is the proposed location for the Midtown Tri-Rail Coastal Link station. From the eastern extent of the neighborhood, it's about a 9-minute bike ride to the Allapattah Metro Rail station, and from the western extent of the neighborhood, it's about 5 minutes. And to the Tri-Rail Coastal Link station, it's about an 8-minute bike ride from the western extent of the neighborhood, and about a 2-minute bike ride from the eastern extent of the neighborhood. And the walk to the Allapattah Metro Rail station ranges between 17 and 30 minutes, and to the proposed Tri-Rail Coastal Link station, 5 to 23 minutes. The last thing that I'll mention is an ongoing effort that the city's been engaged with called the Better Bus Project. What you find in mass transportation usage, particularly rubber tire, buses and trolleys, is that the best kind of service is high frequency, bi-directional straight routes. It's easier to understand, much more efficient to get around. So the transit map on the left-hand side has lots of circular routes, lots of jogs, lots of routes that end sort of suddenly. That's very difficult for people to navigate. The Better Bus Project is attempting to realign all those routes into those bi-directional high-frequency routes that you can see on the right-hand side. The orange indicates 15-minute or less headways. So as you can see, the area in yellow, before the Better Bus Project, there's not particularly great service in and around the Wynwood Norte neighborhood, but after realigning everything through the Better Bus Project, we have those orange routes along 7th Avenue across I-95, along 36th Street, up and down 2nd Avenue and Miami Avenue, and then a new route along 29th Street. So I'd like to close with this picture from the Community Vision Plan. It probably would never be built out like this, but it's intended to really convey the intent of the plan was to create this multi-generational, multicultural, diverse neighborhood that has a vibrant public realm, multiple modes of transportation, a great combination of low scale, high scale, new and old, lots of public open space, a neighborhood that's really evolving for everybody. With that said, the Planning Department recommends approval of all 3 items. I remain available to answer any questions that you have, and at the discretion of the chair, I'd like to turn the microphone over to Steve Warnick and Juan Moratz, who worked with the Community Enhancement, the Wynwood Community Enhancement Association for that first year of the community visioning process when the city was disengaged, to explain the process of community engagement and really who was at the table during that process.
Okay, and would you consider them part of the city's presentation?
Yes.
Okay, they may join.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Steve Warnick with Warnick & Co. My office is here in Wynwood, 89 Northeast 27th Street. And Juan Moratz is also with us, and Juan's with Plus Serbia Design. And, they were very involved in producing and bringing the community's vision to life with this community vision plan. Joe did a great presentation and really covered a lot of ground. So I kind of see my role, and I'll keep it short, talking about kind of where we came from and why, and the 2 years of work that has gone on with a very diverse group of stakeholders in the neighborhood, kind of reflecting the different stakeholders that are there in the neighborhood, both historically and with a lot of the changes that have gone on over the last several years. I will share my screen. Just have a few slides. All right. Can you see this okay?
Yes.
All right. So, yeah, this NRD2, I have to say, it's a pleasure to be here, even though it's virtual and we'd rather be there at City Hall. This has involved a lot of work, but it has been incredibly rewarding. It's been a huge learning experience, I think, for everyone who's been involved.
Can you go slideshow view so we can see?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. How's that?
Excellent. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay. So when I first attended a meeting, and it was before the association had actually been formed, there was a group, and I think most of them are part of the initial board of directors. We were at the Bakehouse, and Kathy Leff had come in and really brought some energy with her and had experience in working at other, neighborhoods and other community groups. And what we noticed was there was a lot of great people working in the neighborhood, but they didn't really know each other. And, there were people who had come into the neighborhood recently, people who'd been there a long time. But I did a questionnaire with the folks that were at that meeting. And the one question where they all identified the same answer was 100% of the respondents identified lack of civic organization and advocacy as the #1 challenge to neighborhood revitalization efforts. We obviously knew, and my office is right across the street, and I've been very involved in the Wynwood Arts District, and even no matter who was there, we all knew what has been going on with Midtown, other neighborhoods, and this part of Wynwood, which is really the origins of Wynwood, and the original what is now Roberto Clemente Park was Wynwood Park about 100 years ago, but it's kind of been left behind. It's declined. The population has really declined over the years, and there was a recognition that we need to start with some basics, and that started with let's come together and talk to one another. And I think my role was to try and facilitate that discussion and try and empower them and talk about what the city's responsible for and what the county's responsible for. And, so that's really where it started, and identifying basic needs like securing trash cans, new lighting, things of that nature that Adriana touched on. I think most of you have been in this part of Wynwood, but, it is really a family-friendly neighborhood, and the original bones of the neighborhood are really there. It's very walkable. It still has a lot of services. Seniors will come to DeHosto Center who may have moved out of the neighborhood, but they come back there on a regular basis to have a meal or to see old friends. Sorry about that. So the association itself, and Adriana already touched on this a little bit, but the makeup of the board I thought was worth touching on because I think it is very diverse. You've got property owners. You also have, like, the Bakehouse is a property owner, but they obviously are providing other services in the neighborhood, and they incubate artists and have been there a long time. Mission San Juan Bautista is a church that has been on 2nd Avenue for some time. They're headquartered at the Corpus Christi site on 7th Avenue in Alpata, but they have gotten very involved and are really another anchor in the neighborhood. The Arnold Melgar, who's a lifelong resident and works with Foundation of Fame. Will Vasquez, who I was a little, I don't think he was able to speak today, but he is really the rock. He's lived in that neighborhood. His father's still alive, lives in that neighborhood, been there 50 years. So they really bring a lot of context. And Arnold's a younger guy, so different ages, different backgrounds, different perspectives, but all working together for some basic principles like let's improve the neighborhood, let's improve the quality of life. That's where it started. And the association has always been less focused on, bylaws or membership characteristics, and really it was just focused on, can we bring together all of these groups who are doing good work, but they're doing work kind of on their own. Maybe we can be that platform that brings everyone together and works with the city and the county agencies. So this 2 years of community engagement, it was certainly not in anticipation of this hearing. It was really the core purpose to start was to engage. So in 2018, there were the first public meetings, always at Clemente Park. Obviously, in the last several months, we've had to get creative and find new ways to engage. But it really started with connecting with city departments. In 2019, things started to pick up a little bit. Some people had some ideas about securing trash cans. It was launching some social media. And then deciding, you know what, a lot of what we're doing, and I would explain to them that planning is not just about zoning, like planning is a broader concept. And if you all are willing to put the time in and we continue to work with different groups, that's really a great calculus for doing something. We ended up calling it a community vision plan, and and bringing in Pluserbia, and there was a lot of different stakeholder participation and a lot of different ways of participating. So some of those are laid out there. That culminated in September of 2019 with a town hall that was, every seat was filled, and I think Commissioner Hardiman was there at the end, but it was a good moment. So the vision plan was a great process. A lot of people had never been through something like that before. They learned a lot about the neighborhood. And then, when Juan presents, he'll talk more in depth about what was happening with the vision plan and what came out of it, what the great ideas and the recommendations. But even after that vision plan, we kind of had a moment where oftentimes a plan will go on the shelf. We felt like we're in a moment of time where this neighborhood could start to change fairly rapidly, even with the existing zoning. There's a lot of development pressures. So there also was a lot of momentum building. It continued to build even after the vision plan was done, because the community association was constantly bringing new people in or meeting new groups. It was this Walkable Wynwood Association popped up last year and started talking to the association. So there always was dialogue going on, and that just continued the momentum. So this year there was focus groups on the commercial corridors to kind of dig a little bit further into how do we bring back Main Street. The planning department was starting to get involved then because the commission had recognized the plan and asked the planning department to study it, which obviously the association was really excited about. Obviously COVID hit then in March, and we did pause. And I remember talking to Adriana and saying, look, I don't know what the answer is. I mean, I think we should take people's temperature and see what stakeholders want to do. We always know we have a lot of different types of stakeholders. Are people comfortable communicating in different ways? Are they hurting? Are they healthy? So I think there was that type of outreach that occurred. But what we heard, I think, is important, because it's why we're here, really. People said, of course we should move forward. It's like our COVID recovery plan. This neighborhood has declined so much, it's at risk. There's a lot of need to build that community resiliency. And if we can do it, if it's technically possible, I want to put the time in, right? Like, those were the kind of answers we were hearing. So Adriana did a great job of, kind of identifying the new media. It's not just Zoom calls, it's communicating with people through WhatsApp, or just being more in touch with community partners and sharing information. The Net Office has been a great partner. And that led to this Wynwood Norte Town Hall, because there was a lot of work going on with the planning department. And we kind of were able to work through the pandemic because people really thought it was important. And we just found ways to engage differently. And we didn't limit ourselves to the process, right? Because the planning department had recognized the NRD could be a very good tool, not to implement the entire community vision plan, but a lot of the great ideas that were there, and certainly the parts that the city has jurisdiction over. So even after that town hall, we started holding weekly Friday Zoom updates, because we figured the more opportunities there are for people to participate, the more questions could get asked and answered. More people could come into the process. So obviously it is a big area, and not everyone in the neighborhood has participated, but here we've got a couple numbers. Just to show you, like in the vision plan, I don't have the exact number, but we know it was more than 100 different people participating. But now with this Wynwood Norte Town Hall, there were notices going out to 500 plus people in the neighborhood, property owners, in addition to social media and email lists and community liaisons. So it's always increasing, the amount of community engagement going on. I'll zoom through this, which is just a little slideshow of the ways that the communication has occurred, both in English and in Spanish. Some of these are for the community workshops that were held in 2019. There was one during the week, there was one on a Saturday morning. So different types of participation during the week and on the Saturday morning. And one was at Clemente Park, one was at Jose de Diego Middle School. Social media, the Facebook page is updated regularly with photos, with certain information, certainly anything about this process that's going on. These are some shots from the focus groups from February, which was the last in-person engagement that we were able to have. But we've also tried we're messaging to a lot of different people. And this is something where nothing I've worked on as a land use attorney or as a planner, this is not my specialty whatsoever. So, but I've realized this is going to become more important. And if we want our neighborhoods in Miami to come together and work together and be more resilient and, you know, be more involved in their futures, I think that is a lesson to be learned from this, which is can't be afraid of it. And I think we just have to like work a little harder, whether it's the city staff or it's private sector consultants or it's the volunteers, the neighbors, you know, people were willing to work. I think there's a lot of good that can come out of this. So you can see even, you know, most of the notices that have gone out have English and in Spanish, different ways to participate. This is obviously after COVID and the city provided the Zoom information and all that. The actual, there's actually a certified mailing that went out as well to all the property owners. Joe already touched on most of these statistics, so I won't go through them. But the key is the association recognized some of these statistics. You could feel it. You go to school, you know it's under capacity. You don't see people using the playgrounds. People will talk about how they pulled their child out of school because it just doesn't have the resources, or, you know, they just don't have the programming. So you can hear it, that narrative in the neighborhood. It's backed up and consistent with the data. But there are amazing strengths: green space, affordable housing, public land ownership. These are approximates, but the 3 of the 5 largest owners are the school board, the county, and the state of Miami. And Joe touched on what that means for potential affordable housing. So last slide I'll do, and then I'm going to turn it over to Juan. I just want to call out the multi-generational community part, because this is something that you would think that you'd see it in a lot of places. I think we have neighborhoods like Little Havana, maybe Little Haiti, and there are some. This is one of those neighborhoods where truly you see people of all ages, and you see, you know, like I took that picture. It's a little stylized, but I remember seeing them and thinking, this is it. Like, this is what this neighborhood has always been, and this is the character we don't want to lose. So with that, I'll turn it over to Juan.
Thank you, Steve. I'll keep it very brief, board and chair. My name is Juan Mullerat. I'm the principal of Proservia, 1385 Coral Way in Miami. We got involved 2 years ago, and I feel that it's very fortunate and fortuitous that we are presenting today, since on Monday it was Neighbor Day, National Neighbor Day. And this plan is nothing but about the neighborhood. It was born from the neighborhood, and it's the neighborhood that's coming to you with a vision that they came together to create, and working with the city. We have refined it since then, and that's what you're seeing there today. Steve, if you go to the next one. Again, Joe has covered a lot of things. Thank you, Joe. The presentation was fantastic. I wanted to note, go back one.
So one thing, I'm going to pause for 1 second, because I'm starting to hear stuff over and over again. We've had about 2 hours of presentation from city. So let's just pause for a moment. Let's using Mr. Wernick's term, let's take the temperature of the board and see if there's any questions that would be better served, or time will be better served by getting some back and forth between you guys and members of the board. So if we could just release this from presentation view, and I'd like to get the board's input, and let's see if we can get those questions addressed. So I see Mr. Dominguez' hand is raised.
I have a question. It's actually more of concerns before, and I don't mean to be picking on anybody in particular, but if I could ask Mr. Wernick some questions just for transparency.
Yeah.
I mean, Westdale, the developer, is based out of Texas.
Yep.
You actually work for them, don't you?
Yep, they've been a client for a long time.
Okay. You're also a volunteer and a consultant on the Wynwood Community Enhancement Association. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Bornstein is a principal at Westdale Development, and he is the president of the Wynwood Community Enhancement Association. Is that correct?
I don't know if he's a principal. I think he might have a minority.
Well, he's a principal in Wynwood Westdale. It's a
Yeah,
registered,
again, I don't know what his actual title is, but he is affiliated with Westdale.
and he's also the president of the Wynwood Community Enhancement Association. Am I correct?
He is. He also owns some other properties in the neighborhood not affiliated with Westdale.
And Ms. Leff, who owns the bakehouse, has actually had promotions and sponsorships paid by Mr. Bornstein from Westdale Development. Now, Mr. Mullerat works for Placerbia. Placerbia did the study and the design for this entire project. His fee is being paid by Westdale Development. So you got 4 out of 7 people on that board who are, quite frankly, affiliated with a huge developer called Westdale Development in one way or another. Now, I personally think it's a bad look on the association's part, because when you say that there's community involvement in the vision, to me, it's very little community involvement in the vision. If anything, it's being steered by the developer and being presented to members of the community who are largely poor, uneducated, hardworking people who are looking at plans made by Placerbia that are being backed by a developer. And then to make matters worse, and I'm just a little disturbed, and I'm glad the chair asked Mr. Eisenberg if you guys were going to speak on behalf of the city. How could you guys speak on behalf of the city when you guys are associated with a developer? You guys shouldn't even been able to speak on behalf of the city, because it's a complete conflict of interest to have been able to do that. And I know Mr. Eisenberg's got good intentions, and I'm sure he just wanted to give you guys an opportunity to speak for some background color. But in the environment we operate in, I find it highly, highly, highly disturbing that for transparency issues, those things are never disclosed. And now
Everyone in the neighborhood's pretty familiar with all of that information.
But the fact remains that this plan isn't a plan that was founded by the developers or the people who live in the city. The stakeholders are those people that have lived there for 40, 50 years that undoubtedly are going to get displaced. I mean, we're talking about 141 acres. This is 15 times bigger than a SAP, than a special area plan. This is going to have a huge effect on thousands of people. And the fact that it's 700 pages long and people cannot read 700 pages in 2 weeks that they've been given notice. I know Mr. Eisenberg did a nice job of reaching out to members of the board to give us a presentation beforehand. Some of us had time, some of us didn't. But I would be a lot more comfortable deferring this issue to a later date in the chambers where we could have people that could come in and speak for it and against it. I'm not against them, but I am for transparency. And I didn't hear anybody disclosing the fact that Mr. Mullerat was paid by the developer, that you've worked for the developer, that Mr. Bornstein is a principal for the developer, that the lady from the bakehouse has actually benefited from funds paid for from Mr. Bornstein to some of her exhibits, which is fine. It's not illegal. But I don't hear any of that. And then what I do see is a bunch of nice plans. When it comes down to this, to me, it's a massive upzoning that's going to affect thousands of people. Whether or not I vote yes or no has nothing to do with that, but I would like a little bit more transparency going forward. And I would ask the city, if you're going to make a presentation, why would you include in the city's presentation a person like Mr. Warnick or Mr. Miller who are working on behalf of the developers? When you look at it, they're not working on the city's plan. That's your plan, Mr. Eisenberg, not theirs. So that's a little disturbing to me, and that's all I wanted to say on that topic. And I just wanted to put that on the record that I found that highly abusive. Thank you.
Mr. Eisenberg, go ahead.
So if I could just briefly respond to that. What I meant to convey is that Steve and Juan were going to be a part of the city's presentation, but not necessarily speaking on behalf of the city. If that was conveyed incorrectly, I'd like to apologize for that. And the reason that they're a part of the city's presentation is the trajectory of this. So they worked for a year with the community association to develop the community vision plan. And then through commission action, we were directed to pick up that vision plan and then to bring it forward as a neighborhood revitalization district. So that is the trajectory that brought us all here as a part of the same collective presentation, but they don't speak on behalf of the city. I speak on behalf of the city.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, do you mind if I just respond for a minute? Because I think I can help make it more explain the transparency, because I assumed everyone knew that. There was an article that Andres Viglucci wrote in the Herald about a year ago that talked about Westdale contributing the dollars towards the community vision plan. Their involvement has been very little, like personally, like they don't participate actively. I don't know how much, they're not any more aware of what's going on than anyone else in the neighborhood. That's what I'm saying. Their position has been, we're not ready to develop a project at this time. We think it's a good idea to invest in the community. And if the community thinks a community vision plan is something that will help improve the neighborhood, then, they support that. That's been their position. So
Okay.
will they
let's
be
see.
involved like other owners? Yeah, but I see it and
We got it.
folks know about that. That's
I want to get the other board members. Anyone got their hand up? And I just want to go back, Mr. Dominguez talked about, he didn't say a motion to defer, but if there is any inclination that this is not going to be heard tonight, I'd like to deal with that before we go on for a little bit longer and then ultimately perhaps defer. But let's see, Mr. Mann, go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to defer, reason being from what I explained earlier, 770 pages. There's no way anybody on this board could have reviewed that in 2 weeks or
Let's
within
see
the last couple of days.
Let's see if we get a second. Is there anyone wanting to second that motion?
I'll second.
I'm sorry, I didn't pick who said, Mr. Ziegler seconded. All right, so we have a motion and a second, so I'm going to open up to discussion on the motion to,
Can I ask one question related to the deferral motion?
hold on, Mr. Collins. Mr. Mann had his hand up, and I'll go to you right after him. Yeah, can't hear you, Mr. Mann. Still can't hear you. Still can't hear you.
Sorry. I just wanted to reinforce the message that this is a massive upzoning. I'm all for revitalizing neighborhoods, but this is not revitalizing this neighborhood. It is completely metamorphosing. It's morphing into something completely different with it. And what really bothers me most is that it seems to turn Miami 21 into silly putty. It seems to be stretching its parameters to suit the developers, and I'm just a little uncomfortable. I would love a chance to read those 770 pages, and then I could make a much more intelligent decision on whether this was, who really benefits from this. It's obvious that the developers are the ones that are going to benefit the most, and the residents the least. So I would third the motion to defer until we have a chance to really have a look at this.
All right, Mr. Collins.
I would just ask Member Dominguez specifically what you would want the applicant and the city to do between now and whatever deferral date. In my opinion, they've been going at it quite a long time, and I realize it's a very large segment of city property, but it seems like there has been a lot of public involvement, a lot of meetings, a lot of workshops. So I would just be curious as to what's missing to really make a decision.
What worries me isn't so much the public workshops, even though since February we've been under COVID phase 1 and we just recently got out of phase 2. So I don't see how much outreach or how comfortable people would be to go to a meeting. But that put aside, our board, I mean, how would you vote on something that you haven't read? I mean, I can pretty much ask you, Mr. Collins, if you've read it, but I think I would know the answer because it wasn't published. The agenda wasn't published on the website till maybe 2 days ago or a day and a half ago. It's 770 pages. Okay, so there's no rush. And the only rush I see is that there's a special meeting that was announced, God knows when. I mean, we usually have 2 meetings a month. All of a sudden, we have a third one in September to get this through virtually without reading it. So I don't see what the rush is. And I would like for every member of this board to at least acknowledge the fact as to whether or not they've read it or not. I personally haven't read it. That's a lot of pages to read in one day.
Vice Chair?
Please don't think I'm too nerdy, but I did read it. And based on having read it completely, I think that we need to defer it.
Mr. Parrish?
My main concern is, it's hard to say. Listening to all this, I kind of agree that we do need to defer it because it is such a massive change. My questions are always the same thing. Affordable to whom? I mean, the new housing, the new entitlements that are going to be created, who are they going to be affordable for? Newcomers that are coming into the neighborhood or existing residents? I always have that question. And I'd also like to have asked the city, who I think did a wonderful job of correcting a lot of the of addressing a lot of the questions this board always has. But we have 3 NCDs, neighborhood conservation districts, in the city of Miami that are not enforced, largely not enforced. One in the West Grove, one in the rest of the Grove, and the other in, I think, where the chair lives. And I'd like a real discussion of why all of a sudden we have this new creature called a neighborhood revitalization district and what its comparisons are to neighborhood conservation districts. Because Mr. Eisenberg did bring up the West Grove. This reminds me so much of the vision plans that were created over a long period of time in Zurich Park in the Grove, with the whole vision plan for Grand Avenue. And you see Grand Avenue today, 20 some years later, 2002, I think the vision plan was, and the neighborhood conservation districts, what's happened. So overall, in the midst of this pandemic, and with all the other questions about poisoning the bay and everything else, we have so many large questions about where the city is going as a whole that I'm certainly for deferring this, even though it was quite a thorough presentation by Mr. Eisenberg. I have not read the 770 pages, and I'm looking forward to doing that. Thank you.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor. Madam Attorney, can Mr. Dominguez make one motion on all 3, or do we need to take them separately?
There's no prohibition, and they're all companion items. So if you want to make one motion, that's fine. I would remind the board that if there is a date certain, that would probably be preferable at this time, and you might want to specify it. I know a lot of notices have gone out regarding this.
Mr. Dominguez, will you take that as a friendly amendment to your motion that you're covering all 3?
Want me to make a motion?
I think you've already made your motion and it's been seconded. I'm just trying to get clarity that it can be one motion for all 3, and that Mr. Ziegler is agreeable that it's all 3 as well.
And do we need to give direction as well of what we want, why we're deferring it, what we would like them to come back with, or just defer to give us time to study it?
So I think there's been some member comments that hopefully they've listened to on questions, and certainly seems that a majority, well, a number of us haven't read it, and I think it gives the time to read it. Did you want to specify a date, Mr. Dominguez?
I'll be quite frank with you. I mean, I would love for it to be done in the chambers. We can't really predict when that's going to be, and I also don't want to put undue pressure on Mr. Wernick and his clients, but I'd say maybe not the next meeting, the one after.
So, Mr. Chair, if I may, our district commissioner's last commission meeting is October 22nd. And I think his hope was that they could bring it to city commission before he leaves. I understand it may get deferred tonight, but if it's possible to get to this board before the 22nd, that I think would be obviously preferable, just because we won't know when that district commission seat might be replaced. And obviously his office has put a lot of time into working with the association and all the other organizations.
When's the next meeting?
The next meeting is October 7th, and the agenda has already published for October 7th. It is important to note that the governor extended his order allowing for virtual quorums of boards through November 1st. So pending further direction from our administration, we would presume, and correct me if I'm wrong, Amber, that virtual meetings will continue through November 1st.
You know, because my thing is I'd like for the people that live in Wynwood who may not have the technology to get online to participate if they want to come down to the commission chambers and to express their concerns or support. Just because I'm asking for it doesn't mean I'm against the program, the resolution, but I just want more people to be able to participate in the process and have a fair discussion. And like I said, have everybody read it. So I'm open to whatever date the board's open to.
So why don't we shoot for that second meeting in October?
That's fine.
And, you know, most people have a telephone, and maybe through some extra community outreach by, I'm just going to call it the city, that we can get some more of those type callers in. And then I would request that you also add to your motion that these 3 items be the only item we hear at that meeting.
Okay. And will that meeting be before the 22nd to accommodate Mr. Warnick? What is the date of the second meeting in October?
The 21st, right?
Yeah, it's the meetings in October 7th and October 21st.
All right. So I'd like to make a motion to defer resolution 1 and the accompanied motions for October 21st.
And that it be the only item on the agenda?
And it'd be the only item on the agenda.
All right, Mr. Ziegler, you were the previous seconder. Do you still agree with
Yeah,
the?
I agree.
All right, can we call, well, hold on, Mr. Gersten, I saw your hand up. Did you have a comment on the motion?
No, it just I know you, Chair, have already stated that, you know, there have been enough comments made, but to Vice Chair's sort of following up on that point, I think the allowing time to read for board members that haven't been able to get as deep into it as they'd like to, that's Mr. Dominguez's point, pretty reasonable. But I'm concerned because we've seen this over and over again. I don't know. We usually don't see as much outreach, right? Certainly quantified in the presentation. You know, we know that it happened. There's receipts. I think it's a good point to bring up again before we just vote on this, to clarify if there's a specific, you know, to just say, well, maybe talk to some more people or something. Like we've definitely seen in these other hearings that people are responding to the notices. We're getting like these emails with all the consolidation of comments from neighbors and stuff. So again, I think the spirit is good, but from a like technical perspective, what are we really asking for in addition to giving us time? Because I feel like, you know, if we're really going to hear it again and talk it through, what's enough, what's not enough, what's going to satisfy those my fellow board members in terms of that. Because I mean, I'm interested to get into it deep and really go into some of the parts of the technical, you know, how this all works and the different zoning and that stuff, because it's, you know, I think that's the meat of it. And I don't have questions as much about outreach, but whatever. So I just wanted to get that.
Vice Chair, you had your hand up?
Yes, I think one of the most important things that I want to hear from the city is what is going to happen to the 150 or so families that are low income that are going to be displaced. It's great to say that the county owns a lot of property there. And also when you're listing the county-owned property, I guess you're all probably including the school and that acreage number.
That's separate.
Okay.
Regularly separate.
So it would be nice if maybe the city reached out to the county. We got a commitment that they will in fact build those 1,000 plus units for low income housing. If we don't have something more than some sort of a guarantee, something more about what's going to happen to these poor people, we can't continue to just keep displacing the poor in our community. I have nothing against this plan. This is a great looking plan. I've read it. But I keep going back to there's no R3 zoning in the entire neighborhood. It's all being taken away. So the lowest zoning in the whole area will then be T4L. which concerns me. And the second thing that concerns me is what's going to happen to the very poor people that live there.
Can I just provide a data point to
I
that?
think that's what we need to come back with. We can hear that one when we come back after the deferral.
Agreed. So we have a motion and a Mr. Ziegler.
Yeah, only thing I was gonna say, I'm on page 323, so it is a big plan. But I mean, I'm not against the plan, but there's no doubt about it that this neighborhood has changed, and there's no way with the amount of land that you're changing there, especially with all the zoning changes, that it's going to remain the same. It's almost impossible. The pressure that's going to come from the Wynwood below 29th Street, now that prices, will shift a little bit, it's going to be incredible. So, I mean, it's definitely going to change. I'm not saying that's good or bad, but it's definitely going to change. What you see here in this area is going to be completely changed. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. The pressure on the tax base and everything else, it's going to change. So this whole block that we look at, the whole 141 acres are going to change. There's no other way to put it.
Mr. Chair, just one quick thing, which is the population. I was going to get to the last slide, which is in 1985, it was 10,000 people, and now it's at 4,000.
We have a motion and
It's already changed.
we have a motion and a second on all three to defer to October 21st. And be its own group of items. Mr. Snow.
Yeah, regarding the date, October 21st, we have items already on that agenda. One of those items is the Eastside Ridge SAP. So I just want the board to understand that, and maybe there's another date that can be considered. Thank you.
Ms. Ketter.
Thank you. So I think the Eastside Ridge, just to add to David's point, the Eastside Ridge SAP is tentatively scheduled for October 21st. However, that was before the governor's order that came down this afternoon, extending virtual meetings. I do not believe they will move forward with the virtual meeting. So I don't think that will move forward on that date. But it is tentatively scheduled for that.
Chair, if I could.
Go ahead, Mr. Snow.
So I can tell you that Eastside Ridge has not completed their public community meetings as directed by the board at this time. But that is an item that they are hoping to discuss that night with the board regarding virtual meetings for the Little Haiti community. So they are planning to keep it on the agenda so that they can discuss with the board appropriate actions regarding this board's request.
So guys, I look you all in the eye. It's too many items. We can't have both.
So to understand David, they will be there for more of a discussion on how to move forward, not necessarily a presentation of their item.
That's correct. That's correct. But
there will be significant public discourse, whether it's virtual or otherwise.
Yes.
Yes, because the item will actually be set for that day to be heard. And so, the applicant may plan on requesting a deferral and getting feedback from the board regarding meetings, the community meetings, but it will be noticed as that item on the agenda. It won't be a simple discussion item. So it may elicit a lot of public comment.
Any interest to, as a courtesy to the outgoing commissioner, to hold a special meeting like we did for tonight? Mr. Gersten? Can't hear you, Mr. Gersten.
Yeah, I don't know if that requires a motion or if that's just part of Mr. Dominguez's motion, but I would do that.
What if
we're here on that already once? I think, the idea that we're asking to, again, the ask is not unreasonable, I get, to review whatever, but yeah, I
So I mean, this is where I really need feedback from the board before I would call a special meeting. Because I know this is time that
I
we
would
take
be
out
in
of our
favor.
schedule.
I would be in favor of a special meeting for this item.
What if we did October 14th, another Wednesday evening in the middle of those two dates that we've already discussed? Would that be enough time between now and then, Mr. Warnick, to do what's been recommended?
I think for our part, fine, but I would defer to staff, just in terms of if it affects noticing for the commission or something
Well,
like that.
October 14th, there's a code enforcement board meeting already scheduled in the evening.
So you can't, I mean, this is all virtual. You can have two board meetings at the same time?
We have limitations in a virtual environment on the city's resources. So while we're in a virtual environment, we can only accommodate 2 meetings per day, and there has to be other requirements met because various departments are making sure that these virtual meetings are successful and they're all staffed properly.
Olga, can you check the schedule and see when we can get?
Yes.
And Mr. Chair, it's not just that I want to thoroughly read the 770 pages, but I think the vice chair brought up an important point. I'd really like to hear what the 140 families that are potentially displaced, what's going to happen with them. And I'm not sure we can get that information between now. That's 2 weeks from now, October 14th. So that's a big concern of mine as well.
And we did hear from some of them on the public comment tonight.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a quick question just to clarify for our purposes? Because we of course are not going to shy away from doing additional public outreach. That's a lot of that has been going on. When you say 140 families, are you talking about in the county's housing? Or are you talking about something else?
I think it was the list of people who had homestead.
Oh, the 140 homestead.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I'm not sure.
Yeah, because if you're doing
why
away
they
with
would-
you're doing away with T3 completely.
Okay. I don't think anything that's going on would affect them that way.
Okay, and what about the people that are in the low income housing, the public housing?
Yeah, so like the county has no plans today that I know of to actually redevelop anything immediately. So who knows? I mean, we don't know when that might happen, but I don't think the projects that I know of that have been talked about, there's not very many right now. I think the fear is internally that today anybody can knock down any building and get a demo permit and reduce the housing even further and further, and we have more vacant lots. That's
Mr.
what
Warnick,
makes it so tough.
I'm not disputing your plan. It's a good plan.
Yeah,
I'm just saying
telling
there
you
are
what
things that
I
need
don't
to be
want to
discussed.
go into discussion because then we'll hear the meeting tonight, or the item tonight. Ms. Ellis.
Mr. Chair, I don't know if this is a consideration because we haven't discussed it with the rest of staff, but perhaps we could have the meeting start earlier on the 21st. That might help alleviate the fact that many of the other dates are already closed because we have existing public meetings.
We have a Urban Development Review Board meeting on the 21st that is scheduled.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there any other meeting the week of the 12th that is possible?
On the 12th, that's a holiday. It's
Just the week of the
Columbus
12th.
Day.
The week of the 12th.
We have availability on October 13th. That is a Tuesday, and I am quickly checking to see if there's another city board perhaps that has already taken that date. I am showing one, but it may be canceled. So October 13th may be a possibility in the evening or in the afternoon. And then we have Friday, October the 2nd, Friday, October the 9th, and then Thursday, October the 15th, Friday, October the 16th.
Friday, October 16th.
Could we get Henry Liu, the public housing director, to be present at that meeting? If possible.
We can certainly make the request, or someone from his staff, a direct report, who can speak on his behalf, certainly.
That'd be great.
Can you amend your motion, Mr. Dominguez, to Friday, October 16th?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to defer this item and the accompanying items till October 16th.
And can we,
And for it to be the only thing on the agenda that day.
and is there, does he have ability in that motion to perhaps start the meeting at 5 p.m.?
And to be able to start that meeting at 5 p.m.
All right, Mr. Ziegler, do you still, you still good with the second?
That's still second. Yes.
Okay, let's go ahead and call the roll, please.
Yes, sir. Motion to defer to Friday, October the 16th at 5 p.m. File ID 7850, 7851, and 7852. Mr. Dominguez,
Yes.
Mr. Ziegler,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Gersten,
Mr. Gersten, we can't hear you if you're speaking.
Mr. Mann,
Yes.
Mr. Parrish,
No.
Mr. Porosov,
Yes.
go back to Mr. Gersten.
No.
You,
Yes.
Vice Chair Torrance,
Yes.
and Chair Garavaglia.
Yes.
Motion passes 8-2. Of information, the agendas are published 5 full business days before the meeting. So this agenda will be published on October 8th, 2020 for the October 16th meeting. And also as a point of information, the agenda for this evening was published on September the 22nd at 4:41 p.m.
Okay, is there any more business to come before us tonight? I don't believe so. Is there anyone willing to make a motion to adjourn?
Before you do,
Mr. Parrish.
I just want to say, personally, I miss Mr. Altabi. I'm sorry he's no longer on our board. What a great board member.
Me too. Me too.
Motion to adjourn by the vice chair. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, and stay safe.
Good night.
You too.
Good night.
Thank you very much.